Welcome to this Principles of Macroeconomics course. Today I'm going to lecture on Topic 9. So let's go see what Topic 9 is about by going to Lecture Topics and opening the lecture topics up and by clicking Open in a new tab. I've already done this, it's right here. And so Topic 9 is about supply. We're going to want to define the law of supply. Oh, I have to remember to talk about instances where that law of supply does not hold. I'll try to remember that. I don't think I have it on the PowerPoint. And draw a supply curve labeling all axes correctly. The second part is list the ceteris paribus variables that affect supply and illustrate a shift in supply curve. Now discuss how a change in each of these variables would lead to the shift you have illustrated in your drawing. I think this topic question would make more sense, of course, with essay exams if this one were selected. All right, so just to orient ourselves, again, we started the course with discussion of scarcity, which is why we have economics to begin with, and choice. And with a little aside about the scientific method, we went on to discuss the production possibilities frontier and how it can illustrate choice and opportunity cost, and a number of other economic concepts. And we spent 3 topics on that. And then, of course, somewhere in here, which I skipped over, there's a discussion of how society chooses where on the production possibilities frontier to produce. Basically, the question is what to produce, and then how to produce it, and then who gets what has been produced. Those are the 3 questions every society needs to answer. And we said there were 3 basic, pure types of answers, archetypes, if you will. Traditional society answered it by tradition. Then a command society or a socialist society answered it by command, by authority, by the plan. Everything was planned, what to produce, how to produce it, who got it. And finally, a decentralized market system where actually the interplay of supply and demand determined prices, which determined the amount that would be produced and at what price, and how much people earned was based upon the supply and demand for their factors of production, labor being the most important, and the amount of income you earned determined who got what was produced. So we are really then into that with the circular flow of economic activity. And let's open that up very quickly. And so basically, we're right here in this market, the final goods and services market. The demand comes from households' desire to spend money on goods and services they want, and the supply comes from business firms hoping to, make a living and earn a profit in producing the goods and services that households want. And so that we're on supply right now, okay? Back here, so that's how we got to topic 9. Let's open up the PowerPoint. I'm thinking of changing the title of this to PowerPoints, videos, etc. because I'm putting all sorts of things in there now. Let me open this up. Why is this not opening up? Open up. Open Sesame. Huh, come on. It doesn't seem to want to respond to me. I don't know why. There we go. So we're down here in topic 8 and 9, and I have been adding videos that I've been finding on YouTube. The ones I really like are from Marginal Revolution University, but these ones from Khan Academy are interesting and filled with valuable information too. And I've done that for both demand and supply. Let's open topic 9, and I have done that right here. And here is topic 9 on supply. So let's take a look at willingness and ability of sellers to produce and offer to sell different quantities of good at different prices during a specific time. That's what supply is, willingness and ability to make available the goods and services people want. So the law of supply is this, that as the price of a good rises, the quantity supplied of a good rises. And as the price of a good falls, the quantity supplied falls. Everything else the same. Let me draw here. Let me get this. And I don't know, let's use red. How about that? So basically, what we have here is a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied, okay? And this is quantity supplied, all right? And this is the independent variable, and of course, quantity supplied is a dependent variable. And basically, this relationship is a direct or positive one because both variables move in the same direction. And the same goes if the price falls, which we see here. Okay, if the price falls, the quantity supplied falls too. So the supply curve then represents this direct relationship. As you can see, at $1, the 20 of good X, or 10 of good X is supplied. At $4, 40 units. And you can see as the price goes up, the quantity supplied goes up. All right. And I guess we can use blue. And if the price were to come down, the quantity supplied would come down. Okay. So there is a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. Oh yeah, here I can see on the very next slide that I have an exception to this. And that is a supply curve where no matter what happens to price, the quantity available does not change. For example, the number of theater seats. Or since I'm giving this lecture in the fall and there's soon to be a University of Texas football game, the number of seats in I guess I've renamed the stadium just recently. I'm going to have to remember the Ricky Williams and Earl Campbell Memorial Stadium, I believe it was, from the Joe Jamal Stadium. Is that right? Is it the field? I thought it was the Darrell Royal Memorial Stadium. Maybe it's a field they've renamed. I better check on that. Not that that matters here. But anyway, at any given time, the number of seats is fixed. Like for this coming football game, it would be fixed. Also for Stradivarius violins, or let's say we're interested in the production Van Gogh paintings, those are fixed. They're Stradivarius and Van Gogh are long dead. They won't be producing anymore. The quantity is fixed. As we'll see, the only thing that will influence price is the strength of demand. And when was it? It was a few years ago. I was giving a lecture in class, and I talked about a young woman whom I saw at the Long Center, City of Austin Performance Center, and she was just great. And she was playing a Stradivarius violin, and so this came up, and I said, it must. I hear they cost around $4 million, but students looked it up on their smartphones, and it was rather amazing what the demand was. But apparently, it was at that time, it may be even worth more now. $16 million for a Stradivarius violin. Almost unimaginable. And obviously, she didn't own it. Some very wealthy patron had lent it to her. We could get off into other considerations about insurance and how they transport it from site to site and what security measures they take, etc. I would imagine. But anyway, these are examples of a fixed supply where you don't have this law of supply where there's a direct relationship between quantity. And in fact, the quantity supplied here is independent of the price. Though certainly if we were talking about the seats in Royal Memorial Stadium, way back in the ancient times when I was a student at the University of Texas, let's put Memorial Stadium. At the UT, I believe it was, and I guess in the thousands we can put this. We're going to measure it in the thousands. Back then it was, if I remember correctly, slightly less than 50,000. Okay, 50,000. So yeah, I don't need to put the K there. And so this was supply curve 1. And then over the years, they've gradually expanded it until we have supply curve of seats in Royal Memorial Stadium, let's say in 2020. And it's not 500,000, I think it's 100,000. So over time, this has moved this way. It's a good question about the price per seat. And I know they charge different prices for different seats. But if we just took the average price, I know in absolute terms it's gone up. I don't know if in relative terms, opportunity cost terms, it's gone up. I would think it has. So I suppose in the long run, you could argue that over the course of, say, 50 years or so, the supply curve has sloped upward and to the right. So in some cases, supply curves that are completely vertical in the short run can slope upward and to the right in the long run. Of course, if you're talking about Stradivarius violins or Van Gogh paintings, not so much, unless you get people trying to take advantage by what would you call it? Counterfeits. Yeah. All right, so that's an interesting aside where the law of supply does not hold. Is you can think of a number of situations like that. So the supply schedule, let's talk about that. That's just a numerical schedule showing the quantity supplied at each and every price. And the textbook didn't supply me with a slide, so let's go take a look at these. I think this opens up in another browser for me. Here we go. And that's all we're talking about right here. And this browser does not allow me to draw on it, I don't believe. But you can see as the price goes from 1 to 2, the quantity supplied goes up. 2 to 3, it goes up more. 3 to 4, it goes up more. And here is the upward sloping supply curve. Now it does talk about shifts in supply curve, which we'll get to momentarily. And they name some things that would cause these shifts. And you'll see that I'm going to name about 7 of them. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them named here. Which ones are they missing? Oh, governmental actions. And what else? Well, they do have substitutes in production. So, I guess natural events, like earthquakes, droughts, floods, tsunamis, things of that nature. We'll get to that in a moment. Let's come back to our PowerPoint. And what is this? Crush the CPA exam.com. Yeah. I'm sure the CPA exam is harder than what they're preparing people here for. But let's open that up. And what do we have? What does it mean? There's a direct relationship between the price of the good and the quantity manufacturers are willing to provide. Okay. Can present it in tabular form. And there's a tabular form. $40, $3,000. $50, $4,000. So you can see as the price goes up, the number of electric blankets supplied goes up too. All right. And that should be fairly easy and intuitive. The supply curve again, here we go, is upward sloping, everything else the same, ceteris paribus. And now we have to talk about the change in supply versus change in quantity supplied. So this is the same sort of lecture that I gave about demand, change in demand versus change in quantity demanded. So the change in supply actually means that the actual position of the supply curve changes, shifts to a new position, whereas a change in quantity supplied means we're just moving up and down a given supply curve, okay? So the variables upon which quantity supplied depends, and you could put this in equation form like we did for demand. What do I have? Red. Let's go to blue. So this is X1. This is X2, X3, X4. And I should read through these. 6, 7. Notice that I have 8 variables. I should check the textbook. When I put this PowerPoint together, they I think only had 6 or 7. I'm uncertain. But so quantity supplied, that is the dependent variable in this functional relationship. And all 8 of these are independent variables. So when they change, it changes the value of the quantity supplied, okay? And mathematically, I suppose, remember, we can say y is a function of x in simple terms in a univariable type of function. But here we're basically saying y, quantity supplied, is a function of is a multivariate function. It depends upon all sorts of variables. Whoops. It's taking me a while to list all of these. Wow. And if I use my red one, essentially ceteris paribus just means these variables are being held constant. And that would be these independent variables we're assuming don't change. And that would give us the law of supply. So the relationship between, say, x1 and y, that defines the law of supply, assuming all these other variables are constant. And that's because, just to reiterate something, we just want to keep a two-dimensional graph going with price per unit here and quantities supplied here. And so the supply curve looks like this. If these variables change, it just shifts the supply curve back, depending upon the nature of the change, let's say to S2. And this is a decrease in supply because notice if we pick one price, let's say P1, we have Q1, and we'll say that's with price 1. And then we have Q1 at price 2, so the quantity supply changes. That's a decrease. Notice the quantity has decreased, and of course, they could get pushed out too. So, and that happens at each and every price. The quantity supplied changes at each and every price when these variables change, okay? And of course, those changes are called shifts. A leftward shift is a decrease in supply, and a rightward shift is an increase in supply. I think I may come back to this because great confusion arises in students taking principles of economics for the first time with this sort of model. All right, and here are the shifts. This is an increase, and this is a decrease. Left shift is a decrease. You really need to keep this in mind. A right shift is an increase. And the reason you need to keep this in mind, where it really gets to be confusing, is that if in a test, at least, if you're being asked, say, a multiple choice question, and you want to take your scratch paper and and make a supply and demand curve, let's say, and see where equilibrium will change. And we're going to get to equilibrium soon enough. So you have quantity, say, here, and price per unit here, and you have S1 here, and it says an increase. The thing that a huge number, plurality of principal students will want to do is to draw that supply curve right here. Because isn't that up? Up? Isn't that an increase? Well, no, it's not, because less is being supplied at each and every price. And therein is the problem, is why we want you to continue using right and left instead of up and down. Up, don't use that. Down, don't use that. Always use left and right. You won't get confused when trying to find a new equilibrium price once we get to start shifting these curves around to find new equilibriums. So then here's just the same list as the previous one, except without the cost. Let's go back and see. Well, let me go to here. So these are the ones that I had boxed up a couple slides earlier. 1, 2, there. So in other words, 2 through 8, it's basically what these are here. They're all the shift variables. Cost of inputs, level of technology used, natural events, governmental actions, subsidies, taxes, laws, regulations, wars, honesty. In other words, do you have to pay bribes to get things done to governmental regulators? Number of firms in the market, expectations of sellers, prices of substitutes and production. So those are all shift variables, ceteris paribus variables, if you will. And yeah, let's see what we have here. So here we have an increase in the supply curve, a shift rightward, and prices of relevant resources, like we'll just put 1. Labor, energy cost, if they go down, that will tend to shift the supply curve out. Okay. That would tend to shift it out. And number 2, technology, and we have an improvement in it. So really, if we're talking, any sort of improvement in the ability and technology to produce something, we can produce more at the same price. So an improvement in technology. 3, number of sellers. Obviously, if there are more sellers coming into the market, they'll be competing for market share, and basically they'll shift the supply out. So at any given price, there'll be more greater quantity that buyers can choose from. Expectations of future price. So if and this is kind of confusing, but if price expectations are for a fall in the price in the future, in other words, lower price, firms would want to supply more of it right now. They're going to try to get rid of what they have to sell at the higher price, okay? So these are for expectations of future prices, not prices right now. See, that would seem to contradict the law of supply, but not if you're thinking about what will happen in the future, okay? Taxes and subsidies. So number 5, if we want to have an increase, if taxes on your production decrease, this will tend to stimulate and cut costs. And if subsidies increase, in other words, the government's going to pay you to produce it, you'll tend to produce more. Government restrictions. I guess if they are, number 6, eased and relaxed and abolished, that will tend to make producing easier and shift the supply curve out. Let's take a look at mine. I think I had 7 of them here. Oh, the 7th one was, let's just take a look at what I said it was, prices of substitutes in production. So, and here, just to remind you, I think maybe back in topics 3, 4, and 5, we might have talked about like a farmer could produce with his land cotton or maize. And so maybe this is quantities supplied of maize and we want an increase. So basically, you have a production possibilities frontier here, and you can be producing way up here that much cotton and that much maize. Or you can be producing way down here at this much cotton and this much maize. Now, so if price of substitute in production falls, like if the price of cotton falls, well, then the farmer wouldn't want to produce so much cotton and would put more, everything else being the same, more land into the production of maize, and it would shift this out, okay? And there you go. We covered every one, I believe. And change in quantity supplied is just the movement along the supply curve. And here you can see, again, this is from the textbook. They only have 6. I had that 7th one. Here you have a change in price from P1 to P2. Just takes you from quantity 1 to quantity 2. There's a movement along. That's only when the price of the good change, price per unit. And these shifts occur when these ceteris paribus values change, okay? Our second homework is going to deal with these shifts and changes in equilibrium price, which is the very next topic, I believe, equilibrium. We've reached the end of this topic. So see you on topic number 10.